Throughout history, cultures around the world have employed various forms of punishment to address criminal behavior, ranging from relatively mild sanctions to extreme and often torturous methods. As far back as 1750 BC, we have evidence of various crimes punishable by death in an ancient Mesopotamian law tract known as the Babylonian Code of Hammurabi. Similar punishments are laid out in the Mosaic Code of the ancient Hebrews, as well as early Roman law. The nature of these punishments was deeply intertwined with the cultural, legal, and philosophical beliefs of the time, often serving not only as retribution, but also as a deterrent and a public spectacle. When we think of capital punishment, our attention is often drawn to public hangings and beheadings. However, some cultures got a little more creative when it came to retribution. Join us in this video as we delve into 5 unusual punishments you've never heard of. Number 1. Scaphism. Over 2,500 years ago, a notorious and downright insidious form of torture arose in ancient Persia known as scaphism. The term itself derives from the Greek word scaphi, meaning boat or hollowed out, and directly reflects the core mechanism of the punishment, trapping the victim within 2 wooden containers or boats. This ancient method of execution was infamous for its excruciatingly prolonged and gruesome nature, and stands out as one of history's most horrifying forms of punishment, designed not just for physical torment, but for a drawn-out, sadistic ordeal. The most detailed historical account of scaphism comes from Plutarch, a Greek biographer and philosopher. In his book, The Life of Artaxerxes, he describes the execution of a soldier named Mithridates, ordered by King Artaxerxes II. Mithridates was punished for falsely claiming to have killed Cyrus the Younger, Artaxerxes' rebellious brother. However, the reliability of Plutarch's account has been questioned by modern scholars. Despite these doubts, Plutarch's description remains the most comprehensive ancient record of scaphism. The 12th century Byzantine chronicler Joannes Sonaras also describes scaphism, but his account is believed to be based directly on Plutarch's work, not an independent source. Nonetheless, with the fragmented sources on the history of the punishment, historians have managed to piece together the process involved, and it's quite daunting. To begin, the victim would be placed naked on their back within one boat, before being covered by a second inverted boat. These boats were crafted to fit snugly, leaving only the victim's head, hands, and feet exposed. The boats would then be sealed or nailed together, severely restricting movement. The condemned were then force-fed enormous amounts of milk and honey until they were so full that a feeling of nausea overcame them. This same concoction was also smeared over their exposed body parts, particularly the face, hands, and feet. All of this was repeated daily. The victim, now trapped and covered in the sweet, sticky mixture, was then left exposed to the sun. The milk and honey, combined with the victim's inevitable excrement within the confined space, attracted swarms of insects, including flies, wasps, and bees. These insects would feed on the victim's exposed skin and the sweet residue. The putrefying excrement, combined with the milk and honey, created a breeding ground for worms, maggots, and other vermin. These creatures would then begin to consume the victim's flesh, both externally and internally, as they entered the body through orifices. The death was not immediate, but agonizingly slow, often lasting for days or even weeks. Mithridates, for example, reportedly suffered for 17 days before succumbing. The victim would endure dehydration, malnutrition, infection, and the psychological trauma of being devoured alive. When death finally occurred, the upper boat would be removed, revealing a body consumed by creatures. The prolonged and excruciating nature of the death was designed to instill fear and trepidation, reinforcing social order through psychological warfare. But despite its terrifying nature, it's not even the worst punishment on our list. Coming in at number 2 is lingqi. This Chinese term is often translated as slow slicing, or more commonly, death by 1,000 cuts. This sinister form of execution was used for centuries in China, as well as Vietnam and Korea. It involved the methodical removal of portions of the body with a knife over an extended period, causing unbearable agony and eventually leading to death. This punishment was reserved for crimes deemed exceptionally heinous, such as high treason, mass murder, patricide, matricide, or the murder of one's master or employer. The practice is first attested in the 5 Dynasties period, which occurred from 907 to 960 CE. It was later included in the legal codes of the Liao dynasty and became more widely used during the Song dynasty, particularly under Emperor Renzong and Emperor Shenzong. The Ming Code dedicated 13 articles to this punishment, indicating its relative prevalence during that era. The terrifying punishment of lynching remained a part of the Qing dynasty's code of laws until its official abolition in 1905. The process of lynching typically involved tying the condemned prisoner to a wooden frame, often in a public place, to maximize humiliation and suffering. The exact method varied as it was not specified in detail in Chinese law. However, it generally consisted of cuts to the arms, legs, and chest, leading to the amputation of limbs, followed by decapitation or a stab to the heart. Some accounts suggest that if the crime was less severe or the executioner was bribed, the first cut would be to the throat, causing immediate death, with subsequent cuts serving only to dismember the corpse. The number of cuts inflicted varies depending on the historical period and source. In the Yuan dynasty, 100 cuts were common, but by the Ming dynasty, records indicate up to 3,000 incisions were inflicted on the condemned. The unimaginable pain that came along with prolonged slashes to one's body would have likely forced the victim to lose consciousness, according to the art historian James Elkins. While some reports describe the entire process lasting no longer than 4 or 5 minutes. Conversely, other accounts mention executions lasting for hours or even days, with some emperors ordering 3 days of cutting. For instance, during the execution of the infamous Ming Dynasty general, Yuan Chonghuan, he was reportedly heard shouting for half a day before his death, leaving us to imagine just how painful this inhumane practice was. By 1905, lynching was finally abolished due to both internal Chinese reform movements and external Western pressure. However, some alleged accounts of its occurrence persisted into the early 20th century. Safe to say, death by 1,000 cuts would be an unpleasant death, but if you think this would have been the worst way to die, our next punishment might just change your mind. As number 3, we have the brazen bull. Better known as the bronze bull or bull of Phalaris, this name refers to a specific form of torture and execution device that originated in ancient Greece. Essentially, the brazen bull was a hollow sculpture made entirely of bronze, shaped like a bull, with a door on one side. The condemned individual would be locked inside, with their head positioned within the bull's head. A fire would then be set beneath the bull, heating the metal and slowly roasting the person to death. The mastermind behind this dark form of punishment was Pericles of Athens, who designed and proposed it to Phalaris, the tyrant of Acragas, Sicily, as a novel method of execution. It's believed the invention dates back to at least the 6th century BC. The device had a particularly gruesome feature in its internal acoustic apparatus. This was a system of tubes and stops designed to convert the victim's screams into sounds resembling the bellowing of an infuriated bull. This, along with steam from the cooking flesh exiting the bull's nostrils, created the illusion that the bull was coming to life during each execution. Legend also suggests that the smoke from the bull was designed to rise in spicy clouds of incense, and that the victim's scorched bones would shine like jewels and were made into bracelets after the body was charred. While the historical accuracy of the brazen bull's widespread use is debated, with some suggesting it may have been created more for intimidation than actual application, it has been cited in various historical and religious texts. Christian sources claim that the Romans used this device to persecute early Christians, including St. Eustace, his wife and children under Emperor Hadrian, and St. Antipas, Bishop of Pergamum, in 92 AD. Some legends also suggest Pelagia of Tarsus was burned in 287 AD by Emperor Diocletian. The brazen bull remains a powerful symbol of ancient cruelty and the macabre inventiveness of torture. Number 4, the Aztec practice of human sacrifice. The Aztec Empire was the dominant and arguably the largest culture in Mesoamerica at the time of the Spanish arrival in the 16th century. Known in their language as the Mexica, this group made significant advancements in engineering, urban planning, education, and the arts. But above all else, they are remembered for their avid fascination with human sacrifice. The practice of human sacrifice was widespread throughout Mesoamerica and did not begin with the Aztecs. The Olmecs, often considered the mother culture of Mesoamerica, engaged in ritual sacrifice, as did the Zapotecs and the Maya. The process of human sacrifice was far from a random act of violence. It was a meticulously orchestrated ritual imbued with profound symbolic meaning. The victims themselves were often captives of war, a testament to Aztec military prowess and a means of asserting dominance over conquered peoples. The Aztecs believed that the gods needed to be nourished with human blood and hearts to maintain the world and prevent its destruction. While some of their victims were prisoners of war, meaning the condemned were executed as a form of punishment. Not all victims were warriors. Sometimes individuals were chosen from within Aztec society or even purchased from other communities, particularly for specific deities or ceremonies. The selection of the victim was often based on their physical perfection, their youth, or their symbolic representation of a particular deity. The most common form of sacrifice involved the extraction of the heart. The ritual would typically take place atop a teocalli, a temple pyramid, often dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and the sun, or Tlaloc, the god of rain. The victim would be led up the steep steps, often accompanied by priests and musicians. At the summit, they would be laid across a sacrificial stone. 4 priests would then hold down their limbs, while a 5th, the Tlatoani, or high-ranking priest, would use a ceremonial obsidian knife to swiftly open the chest cavity. The heart, still beating, would be extracted and offered to the sun, or placed in a stone vessel designed to hold hearts. The body would then often be cast down the temple steps, where it might be dismembered, and in some cases parts of the flesh consumed in ritualistic cannibalism, believed to absorb the victim's divine essence. Other forms of sacrifice existed as well. For instance, victims dedicated to Xipe Totec, or the flayed lord, would be flayed alive. Then, in an almost unimaginable and terrible fashion, the priests would wear their skin as clothing for days. This symbolized regeneration and agricultural fertility. Child sacrifice was also prevalent. At times, young children were sacrificed to Tlaloc, particularly during times of drought, as their tears were believed to bring rain. While undeniably brutal by modern standards, it's crucial to understand the Aztec perspective. For them, human sacrifice was not an act of cruelty, but a sacred duty, a vital exchange with the divine. It was a means of maintaining cosmic order, ensuring the sun's warmth, the rain's bounty, and the continued existence of their world. But this doesn't hide the fact that it was a barbaric practice that inflicted significant pain and suffering on those who were condemned to die this way. Number 5, Catherine's Wheel. The Catherine wheel, also known as the breaking wheel, was a brutal instrument of torture and execution, primarily used in Europe from antiquity through the Middle Ages and up to the 19th century. It takes its name from Saint Catherine of Alexandria, a Christian saint whose legend states she was sentenced to be executed on such a device for refusing to renounce her Christian beliefs. Miraculously, the wheel reportedly broke when she touched it, leading to her eventual beheading. The origins of the breaking wheel can be traced back to ancient times, though it became a widely popular method of torture during the medieval period. Historian Peter Sperenberg suggests a possible origin in the 6th century, referencing Gregory of Tours, where criminals were placed in a deep track and a heavily laden wagon was driven over them. This earlier practice may have symbolically reenacted the later use of the wheel. The process of execution by the breaking wheel was designed to inflict prolonged and agonizing pain. The condemned individual would typically be taken to a public scaffold site and tied to a large wooden spoke wheel, similar to those used on transport carts. Sometimes the wheel was modified with an iron rim or even a blade extending from the rim to increase its effectiveness. The primary goal of the initial stage was not immediate death, but agonizing mutilation. The executioner would begin by breaking the leg bones, working their way up to the arms, often placing sharp-edged timbers under the convict's joints to enhance the effect. In some cases, a coup de grace might be ordered, where the executioner would aim for the neck or heart to end the suffering, though this was less common. Alternatively, the condemned might be stretched out and broken on an X-shaped cross before their mangled body was displayed on the wheel. After the initial breaking, the body with its broken limbs would be braided into or tied to another wooden spoked wheel. This wheel was then erected on a mast or pole, resembling a crucifixion. The body was left exposed to scavenging animals, birds, and decay, serving as a public spectacle and a deterrent. But the worst part is that some victims remained conscious for several days after the ordeal. Some historians believe the breaking wheel also held a sacral function, as it was thought to hinder the transition from death to resurrection. Throughout its centuries of use, this punishment was reserved for severe crimes such as murder, rape, treason, and robbery. In the Holy Roman Empire, it was used explicitly for aggravated murder, and the gruesome nature of this punishment was intended to instill fear and reinforce the power of the law. As we look back at these terrifying and inhumane punishments, it's easy to feel a sense of distance from these practices in the modern era. Our legal systems, with their emphasis on human rights and due process, stand in stark contrast to the punishments of old. Yet the echoes of these ancient impulses, the desire for retribution, the need for deterrence, and the struggle for justice remind us how far we have come as a species. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to subscribe for more just like it.